Let's get into our discussion this evening because the courts have issued a historic ruling. Residents of College Green in Hope Pastures are relieved after winning a case against an Airbnb host for what was described as a nuisance. So was the ruling justified? And what does this mean for Airbnb hosts and possible regulations in the future? I'm joined now by Gabrielle Grant Gilpin Hudson. She's an attorney at law and also first vice president of the Realtors Association of Jamaica. And we also have an Airbnb operator in New Kingston, Sandra Samuels. Hi, Gabrielle, and hi, Sandra.
Hello, good evening.
Great to have you on. So I want to start with Gabrielle. Can you summarize what exactly happened? What did the court declare? You're muted, Gabrielle. Still muted,
okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so sorry about that. Okay, so the written judgment is not available for review yet, so let me put that out there. But based on what has been published, essentially what happened was a particular homeowners association, so not a strata, had an owner in their midst that was operating an Airbnb. They had a situation where they had indicated that they were going to agree to not have Airbnbs operate in that community. There was some back and forth in terms of the owner continuing to operate, and essentially the court has ruled in the homeowners association's favor that the person must immediately stop operating their Airbnb. Part of that discussion had to do with the restrictive covenants on the title, which is a new spicy part of the law on the issue. And that's what's making it very topical. And, I think we'll have a very good discussion on that tonight.
Explain what restricted covenants mean and what this particular one said.
Sure. So restrictive covenants are things that are on a certificate of title that speak to what you can and cannot do with the land. And they typically come from how the land was subdivided. So you'll find that when somebody sets up a development, they can either come from the parish council or they can be covenants that this person decides to put on the titles because they think it will allow for the smoother operation of the development. And these will be placed on all of the titles inside of that development and bind the landowners and their successors in title. So this development had a particular covenant on the titles, which said that the properties were to be used for residential purposes only, not to carry on any trade or business. And so essentially what the ruling spoke about was that means that Airbnb is not residential purposes and it is a business because you're having an intention to not stay in the property long term and have it as a place of abode, but rather, you're there for a short period of time and the person that's operating it is operating a business in that way.
Very, very interesting. And I wonder, so what position is your association? How are you responding to this? What's your position?
Right. So we always promote education amongst our members and education amongst the public. Before buying into somewhere, you want to be cognizant of what's on the title and if there are any rules or regulations governing that community. We believe that communities need to be free to essentially regulate themselves. And you should be able to know what you're buying into, because we do see that some persons, if it is that you choose to live in a community where you prefer to not have these kind of operations going on, then that should be your choice. Whereas other persons, if they want to carry on a business like this, they should be able to as well.
It's interesting. So I want to bring in Sandra. Sandra, you operate an Airbnb in New Kingston. And so the residents of College Green won this case partly on the basis of that restrictive covenant, being that it's only supposed to be residential, no business operations. Now, I wonder if other challenges may come to say that, well, you're in a residentially zoned area. Even though there's no restrictive covenant, this area is zoned by the parish council or whoever does the zoning laws. This area is zoned for residential use. I wonder if any challenge could come based on that. But I was putting that out there. First of all, what is your position, Sandra?
All right. First of all, I am a law-abiding citizen. So if it is that the complex says I cannot operate here, then that is, well, as you said before, or Gabriel said, that the homeowners association should be able to make an agreement if it was thrown out and it was not accepted. Then of course I'm not into breaking any laws. However, I have a few questions that I really, in my interview on Nationwide, I was not so sure that this was indeed an Airbnb property. And I say that to say because everything is lumped into Airbnb. We have several different platforms operating in Jamaica. That's the first thing. You have HomeAway, you have Expedia, you have Verbo, and you have Airbnb. Now, even if the person is on the platform, that does not mean that the person is renting through the platform. So let us get that clear. Short-term rental is not new to Jamaica. I mean, that's why it's so shocking to me, this sudden outburst and this sudden, it's just that it has increased, because I'm sure many realtors have done short-term rentals to persons who are visiting Jamaica for a long period of time, whether it's to do medical a medical procedure or to take care of an old parent, or several different reasons. They're here for work. They're here doing several different things. So they may rent for a month, 2 months. This particular incident, and that's what what I don't like, is nobody is looking at the obvious. It is clear to me that this person, the owner of that property, is well, first of all, they don't care. So that person is not a business person. That person is a hustler. And it is upsetting because first of all, Airbnb has put so much work into ensuring that both parties are covered, meaning there are rules and regulations everywhere you turn. I mean, you're nervous to rent people your place because they can report you in a minute. So for it to have gone on for so long, and for nothing to have been done, he didn't do anything, or he or she, I don't know who the owners are, they didn't do anything with regards to managing their property. And that is what has now put Airbnb into a tailspin, which is unfair, because short-term rental is not new to Jamaica. It's not. I'm a businesswoman outside of this. I'm a businesswoman for 30 years come next year. And business is business. And I mean, if persons don't operate in a particular way in another sector of business, they're handled. They're either penalized, or the business is closed down. So, I know some questions are going to come up that I want to address, but
So Sandra, regardless of the platform, though, whether they're using Airbnb or a different platform or doing it on their own through, say, Facebook, the premise remains the same.
The first thing I said to you is that if that is the case and they were advised that it's not supposed to happen here, then I am not with that person. If you are going against the covenant or going against the bylaws, because in our situation where I am, it was never addressed. It wasn't addressed, none at all. So in the strata committee, we agreed on certain rules and regulations governing that. And the truth is, we have the right to overturn, to stop, to do whatever if it is out of hand. So that is the challenge. Everybody is just on this Airbnb, but that's not the point. The point is, it could be a long-term resident that is offering that same kind of drama. Because I live where I live. I went where I moved to, right? The first week I got here, and it's an owner. I had to be calling security because there was a big brawl in the yard. I've never seen that where I live before. And I mean, Upper St. Andrew. You understand what I'm saying? And that's an owner. So we are making a big deal about short-term rental, but that could be an owner doing the same exact thing. So we're missing the point. Laws governing a complex should be right across the board, not the short-term rentals. Not the short-term rentals. It's almost as if Airbnb is being targeted. I don't speak on behalf of Airbnb.
So are you trying to make the point that long-term rentals are also a business?
Isn't it? Isn't it? Many people have numerous homes and they rent it for profit. Isn't that so? Long-term rental is also a business because many persons have several different homes that they rent out to earn money.
Right.
So it's not about, it's not, and you could be renting to anybody. And so that is my challenge with the whole situation. Rules are rules, long-term, short-term. Rules are rules. And I don't understand why whether it is Airbnb owner or VRB owner would allow. First of all, something is wrong with the whole thing. What is the likelihood? Think about it, Kalila. You have been around for a while, just like myself. I'm 60 next year. What is the likelihood of one person having sequential, numerous bad tenants? Them not related. Them don't come from the same place. That story just don't sound right to me. It has to be the owner. It's the owner.
It is strange. I did find that strange that like almost all the tenants that come in there are a nuisance, something wrong with all of them. So I want to come back to Gabrielle. So Gabrielle, I raised the issue earlier about whether or not you can operate a business in a residential area, regardless of covenant, because the city and the towns have zoning laws. Are there any regulations that stipulate what is allowed and what isn't allowed, or is this a gray area still if Airbnb is to be considered a business?
Yeah, so it's definitely still somewhat of a gray area, but I would dare to say that this case has kind of pushed it over the edge a little bit. So this is not the first case where they've said that, okay, residential purposes, once you're renting it out on a short-term basis, that takes you outside the scope of residential purposes. But the question is whether or not now that flies in the face of zoning. And the person responsible for enforcing a misuse of zoning would really be the various municipal corporations. So it remains to be seen whether or not, for example, they will now be getting strict and saying, okay, well, in certain residentially zoned areas, you can't do this. But generally speaking, for a development to happen in the first place, that municipal corporation has a say in what covenants go on that title. So that is why, for example, some covenants in residential communities will say residential purposes only. And then also you have areas in Jamaica that are dual zoned. So you will have places that are zoned residential and resorts. And in a case like that, then you wouldn't necessarily have covenants that mandate that the property needs to be used for residential purposes only. So I think it comes back down to, if you're buying a property for Airbnb, doing your research and checking to see these things and making sure that you're getting the proper advice, because it's going to start getting more technical and you're going to find people reaching for the rules more to make sure that disputes around the situation are avoided, or they can enforce their rights, as the case may be.
So Sandra, are there any rules or guidelines that regulate this industry or that say how short-term rental operators are supposed to operate?
I really appreciate it. Not that I know of, but persons on the platform, we are guided by rules and regulations. When I say rules and regulations, I don't mean two rules. I mean really, really a number of rules that you have to meet in order to be on the platform. Also, the guest who is staying by your apartment will also have to follow certain guidelines. I have rules for my apartment. My apartment is non-smoking. My apartment is no pets, my apartment is several different things. If they fail to follow, that's why I don't understand. If these people were so disruptive, all the owner had to do was to pick up the phone and call Airbnb. Airbnb would have a conversation with this person, and if they don't comply, they're asked to leave immediately. If they don't leave immediately, they call the police, and they are refunded, and you get back your place. Now, for it to have gone on for so long tells me that something is off. Yes, I understand based on what I heard on the interview with Cliff Hughes that it's an absentee owner, but it doesn't matter because most absentee owners have a manager that that manages the property for them. However, you have some people who cheap it out and they only have the person who's cleaning the apartment doing a handover, and they don't manage the goings and comings of their guests. And because of that, that is why we are where we are.
So we have some comments in the comments section that I want to put to you, Sandra. And this one comes from T876, who says that you're ignoring the obvious and well-documented issues with short-term rentals. They're a nuisance, especially in gated communities. The safety and security issue cannot be overemphasized. And when we have Nicole adding, every day you wake up to strange people just walking in your corridor. In some of these complexes, most of the properties are short-term, which cannot be good for local residents. How do you respond to those concerns?
No, I hear what they're saying. This is not new to, first of all, Jamaica is not the only place that has Airbnbs. So what are they doing in the rest of the world? That's what we need to look at, first of all. This is not something that's going to go away, I would think. This is something that is going to grow as persons need spaces to, when they're coming out for their family. Not everybody can afford a hotel to put 4 people because they would have to pay individually. They rent a home, and these are decent people. Not all are decent, and I'm not going to say that all are decent because I've had 1 or 2, but I handled it quickly and sorted it out. I am not saying that persons are to break rules. There are apartments out there that are targeted solely for Airbnb, and there are some complexes that allow Airbnb. Now, just like, and I also said that in my interview, I have been, for me to move from where I was, it took me almost a year because I couldn't find somewhere to move with my dog, a little teacup dog. You know why? Because persons do not clean up after their dogs. And so persons have put a blanket, a broad brush across the board, no pets. Now, are we living in a civilized society or what? I mean, pets are a part of a family. So, I mean, you're going to tell me that I can't have a pet because what? Persons don't pick up after their dogs, so I have to be penalized. It's the same thing. Things have to be regularized. That's what I'm saying. Things have to be regularized. Business is business. If it's a business, then we have to sit down and see what works for both parties. Because it's not going to go away. If you try and shut it down, trust me, people are going to go underground. Maybe not me, because I can't take stress. I don't do stress, right? So I would rather give it up than to go under any stress. However, it's not going to go away. So we have to find a way to find out what is best for both parties. And as I said before, it boils down to the owner of the property. Not all persons are business persons. Not all people follow the law, rules, and regulations, and that is what is causing the problem. Like any other business, I'm not ignoring it. I'm just saying it's the way forward. It's worldwide. What is happening worldwide?
I do wonder though, Sandra, about people, especially let's say you invest in purchasing a property in a gated community specifically for the security reason, because you feel more secure when you are in a gated community. But then Airbnb comes in, your neighbor is renting out their property to God knows who. Doesn't that defeat the whole purpose?
All right, so where I live, where my Airbnb is, I owned there from 1991. Persons were living there long term. There was a resident living there for over 3 years that was running a passport racket out of the complex. They were not short term. Many persons buy apartments, especially in certain areas, for investment purposes only. Many don't live there. Many owners don't live in the complex. And that is what. So we have a mixture of persons who are buying their first home to live and to have peace of mind. And then you have another set of people who are buying for investment. You say, let's make that money. That is what is going on. And I'm saying to you, what is happening is that it has to be regularized or zone, or whatever you want to call it, zoned, or something has to be done. But the truth is, this is worldwide. Why is Jamaica so resistant, or why is Jamaica so different? Where it is that we're not following the laws that govern elsewhere. We need to look into that.
So, Gabrielle, you just heard Sandra say that she believes there does need to be some sort of regularization. Do you agree with that something is needed?
So I definitely think that. So first of all, as it relates to different communities, I think every community needs, if their rules are silent on the issue, they need to come to a position and say, are we for it? Are we against it? And decide and take the steps necessary to do that. If you are allowing it, it's helpful to have a framework. So for example, certain communities have procedures where the owners operating them are registered. They have requirements about keeping copies of IDs for people, letting them know when people are coming. Sometimes you have to pay additional things for additional security services, things like that. So that is on a community level. And then we have, the national level. We've heard the Minister of Tourism speak about potentially regulating the sector. And especially as it relates to destination assurance, certainly minimum best practices or guidelines, I think that would be welcomed. You knowing, okay, if I'm operating an Airbnb, these are the minimum standards, or a short-term rental, let me not broad brush it. These are the minimum standards that I need to adhere to. Do you have a first aid kit? Are you keeping the place to a certain level of cleanliness, sanitation issues, those kind of things? Do you need a license? What's that process going to be like? Or is it something where you just register? I think those questions are questions that we need to answer, because to Sandra's point, yes, there are other places that have laws and regulations on the issue, but they're not consistent. We've seen a lot of different places doing a lot of different things, going from a New York that is saying, no, we don't want this at all, because there are other considerations. What does it do to your housing market, to your rental rates? And then other jurisdictions saying, well, we'll allow it, but we'll maybe say we'll limit the amount of operators in a certain area. So there's a cap on it. Or we might say, okay, well, you can do it in these areas, or you can do it under these circumstances. So we need to decide as a matter of policy, what do we think will work best here? And that's going to take some time. And I'm hoping some consultation with the various stakeholders in the industry before we make a firm decision one way or the other.
So I put some of these questions to Tourism Minister Ed Bartlett, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago. I want us to play that clip, and then I'll get your reactions. That sounds like you're saying you want to tax it.
No, not at all. And I think we wanted to get, and there's something I needed to say on this, because to create a fiscal arrangement that embraces all does not necessarily mean a taxation policy. The Airbnb, for example, on their platform, has their own method of working out how they can make the contribution to the countries that they have business. And we have been talking, just as they've done to New York and other places where they've been able on their platform. So it doesn't become a burden directly on the Airbnb.
When you said they have been in touch with you, you mean Airbnb? Who's been in touch with you?
Airbnb. I mean, they
about what? What is
about how to enable an arrangement with us that makes a contribution to the economy outside of the accommodation subsectors.
And how are they suggesting that be done? How would you want that?
It is done on the platform itself, long before the visitor comes here. So
how?
the Airbnb owner, let's call it that, for a better phrase, wouldn't have to remit $1. All that is tied into the package that gets there. The customer pays all of that before they come.
So Airbnb gives the Jamaican government a percentage or a fee?
This is the kind of thinking, because that's what they do in many, many countries.
So is that what they do with Jamaica? They give the Jamaican
No,
government
at the moment,
a fee?
there's no such arrangement. So this is what we're looking at as a possibility.
What do you make of that, Sandra?
Business is business. Been in business for 30 years. I pay taxes, right? So if right now, I would say like the last 2 years, the last 2 years, they changed up how you log on online. You have to upload your ID. Well, no, that was from before, but they had changed some levels of authentication about, and they prompt you. This is how do you need to pay taxes in your country? Rah 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 rah. As I said, Airbnb has a structure in place. So what he's saying is not very difficult to do. What he's suggesting is that he will take it upfront, or Airbnb will take it upfront from the guest and give it over to the Jamaican government, which is not a bad idea. I mean, the thing is, you have to pay the piper. The only thing I'm sure is debt and taxes. So the thing is, you have to do what you have to do. Are you running a business or are you running a hustle? You have to make up your mind. But the truth is, what I don't want is for like certain other things that small people in there trying to make life, trying to enrich themselves, trying to step up. When it's regularized, it's only the big man or the big woman can afford to have it done. That's what I don't want. And I'm sure that is why the fear of being regularized is in the sector, because you're doing something and then all of a sudden it is at a particular level that you can't even reach. So I am saying, if it's a business, some level of law, and because people clearly have shown that they cannot be left on their own to manage communal living, to manage laws, to manage all of these things. There has to be something in writing, just like everything else. The reason why I have everything in print, in businesses, in schools, in everywhere, is because there's somebody or a group of people who flouted the law. So they have to put things in place. And the airport, going through the airport, we never used to have to take off our shoes, Talila. We never have to
until 9/11.
Exactly.
When something happens, that's when they come up with all the new regulations.
Knee-jerk reaction, which I'm kind of over it. The knee-jerk reaction. Why are you going to wait until something happens? And this is when I'm looking at this situation. So this happened. So they're going to do this and they're going to do that. No, this is on that owner. No, I know many Airbnb owners, and I don't know of anything like that where you have sequential guests who urinating outside, not taking out the garbage, carrying on in a way that to me is unreal. What is the likelihood of that? So it speaks directly to the owner, which the tenants, the Citizens Association should have addressed his ownership of his, and that's why you can't get into certain complexes,
right?
In upper St.
Let me bring Gabrielle back in. So Gabrielle, it sounds like we're all agreed that there should be some type of regulation before things get out of hand. Should the Realtors Association play any role in that?
So definitely we open ourselves to the government for stakeholder consultation sessions on issues like this. So, we have given our input on proposed legislation in the past, and if the government chooses to consult us, we'll definitely be here to give them our input. But I definitely agree. The minister spoke about the taxes, but that's one small part of what you're going to be doing with the sector. What about everything else? So it's one thing to collect a tax. What are you going to use that tax to do? Are you using that tax for enforcement, for monitoring, for licensing processes? So there's so much more that we're left here wondering, what direction are we going to go in? But I agree with Sandra that I really hope that the direction we choose will not choke out some of the smaller operators, because persons have been able to increase their property values and make very good living off of short-term rentals and other add-on services. And so it would be a shame to exclude those persons from the opportunity to operate in the tourism sector.
Through you.
Quickly, Sandra.
Yes, I would like to ask Gabriella, what I know the real estate operators, they rent like 3 months at a time, 6 months at a time. What has been happening with that short-term rental?
So there are realtors who do carry out short-term rental services. The thing about it though is that right now short-term rentals sit in a very gray area. So realtors, if you're a realtor and you rent properties or you sell properties, you have to go through a licensing process through the real estate board. If you're a property manager, you have to go through a licensing process through the real estate board. What we're seeing is that as far as short-term rentals are concerned, there is no legislation that directly applies to somebody, having to have a certain skill set or knowledge framework or training or any sort of thing to be able to manage a property or host a property for short-term rentals. And so there's a bit of a gray area there. Some real estate agents do it, but some everyday people do it. There's no legislation governing that right now.
Definitely a lot of issues to be examined and looked into. Thank you very much, Gabrielle. Thank you, Sandra.